Hey there everybody, and welcome back to Sasquatch Speaks. This is Sasquatch, otherwise known as Gavisas, welcoming you all once again to this dark little corner of the internet, which is oh so affectionately referred to as our own. On today's episode, we will be continuing the psychoanalysis of Gavi. I pronounced it correctly this time because I was thinking about it before I started. And yes, today we're going to be doing, or I did, Cattell's 16 personality factors rather than doing it live like yesterday. This was a much more involved test, which I will now tell you a little bit more about. To wit, in his explorations of personality, British psychologist Raymond Cattell found that variations in human personality could be best explained by a model that has 16 variables, or personality traits. Using a statistical procedure known as factor analysis, following this discovery, he went on to create and promote the 16PF questionnaire. This test uses a public domain scales from the Internation personality item pool to measure the same traits. That's a very interesting way of putting that word in there. Internation rather than international. But whatever. Basically, this is just kind of his opinion. He's like, oh, you know, I was thinking about it, and I like my version better than anyone else's, which is basically what all these are, but they do have slight variations on what they actually tell you. This is actually the first time I've taken this test, so I don't really know what to expect from it, and I will not be covering all of the many various multitude of I cannot pronounce any words today. Psychological, there we are, that's the word I was trying to say, and personality tests that are out there because there are just way too freaking many of them. But I do have 5, this is being the second of that 5 that I want to do this week. So, the procedure, like I said, why I'm not doing this live. This personality test consists of 164 statements about yourself. For each indicate how accurate it is on the scale of 1, disagree, 2, slightly disagree, 3, neither agree nor disagree, 4, slightly agree, and 5 is agree. It will take most people around 10 minutes to complete. And yeah, it took me a little bit longer because I'm hyper analytical, and took way too long to actually do that. So, without further ado, my results. These are scored on between 0 and 4. So I think I ended up a little bit kind of middle ground here on most of these. I know nobody likes the middle ground. Well, let's see how this goes. My results are warmth is the first one. Warmth is how nice to people you are. Low scores are impersonal, distant, cool, reserved, detached, formal, and aloof. High scores are outgoing, attentive to others, kindly, easygoing, participating, and like people. I got a little over half. 2.7 out of 4, so not too bad. Not really sure what that arbitrary number means, but it sounds good, right? Reasoning. Reasoning is how good at abstract thinking you are. Low scorers prefer common sense. High scorers prefer abstract thinking. On this one, I got a 3.2, which is not which is not at all surprising because of my incredibly analytical self. Emotional stability. Emotional stability is how in control of your emotions you are. Low scorers are reactive emotionally, changeable, affected by feelings, emotionally less stable, easily upset. High scorers are emotionally stable, adaptive, mature, and face reality calmly. On this one, I got a 2.7, so apparently there's not really any surprise there. I've always known I'm kind of even keel. Dominance. Dominance is how assertive you are when dealing with people. Low scorers are deferential, cooperative, avoids conflict, submissive, humble, obedient, easily led, docile, and accommodating. High scorers are dominant, forceful, assertive, aggressive, competitive, stubborn, and bossy. That's a very rude descriptor on one that I got a 3.2 out of 4 score on, so yeah, maybe I need to tone it down a bit. Liveliness. Liveliness is how much energy you display. High scorers are serious, restrained. High scorers? I think this is backwards. This is perhaps may not be the most accurately constructed website. So let's try to do this around the other way, which would make a lot more sense. Liveliness is how much energy you display. Low scorers are serious, restrained, prudent, taciturn, introspective, and silent. High scorers are lively, animated, spontaneous, enthusiastic, happy-go-lucky, cheerful, expressive, and impulsive. That sounds more correct than what they have, which is the exact opposite. On that one, I scored a 1.4, so that makes a lot of sense too. Rule consciousness. Rule consciousness is how much you abide by authority. Low scorers are non-conforming, self-indulgent, and disregard rules. High scorers are rule-conscious, dutiful, conscientious, conforming, moralistic, staid, and rule-bound. To which I scored a 2.7, which, again, I have a... When I searched it out, in my studies of everything, religion, money, law, international relations, the whole 9 yards, I agree with that totally. Because there's a lot of things that's like, you shouldn't do that. Just it's not a good idea for you or anybody else. You just don't do it. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Social boldness is how socially confident you are. Low scorers are shy, threat-sensitive, timid, hesitant, and intimidated. High scorers are socially bold, venturesome, thick-skinned, and uninhibited. And yeah, right there in the middle, 2.2. Nothing too excessive one way or the other. So yeah, that's interesting. Again, as for me personally, I don't see myself, being like, "Rawr, we're going to intimidate you," and anything. And be like, "No, you're not." But at the same time, I'm not going to be that person who's going to be like, "I'm going to scare you into doing something." So that makes it's a good middle ground. Sensitivity is how much you can be affected. Low scorers are utilitarian, objective, unsentimental, tough-minded, self-reliant, no-nonsense, and rough. High scorers are sensitive, aesthetic, sentimental, tender-minded, intuitive, and refined. I'm not sure which of those I want to be described as, but want doesn't really have anything to do with it because I scored a 2.9 and I'm there in the higher end of that. Vigilance. Low scorers are trusting, unsuspecting, accepting, unconditional, and easy. High scorers are vigilant, suspicious, skeptical, distrustful, and oppositional. And I got a 2.6. A little bit above middle ground, so I'm assuming I'm a little bit on the skeptical side, which, again, I agree with. I tend to overanalyze everything, like I've said before. Abstractedness. Abstractedness is how imaginative you are. This one could be for Stoic. Low scorers are grounded, practical, prosaic, solution-oriented, steady, and conventional. High scorers are abstract, imaginative, absent-minded, impractical, and absorbed in ideas. And I scored a 2.9 out of 4, so higher end, like 75%. Yeah. Huh. This one's interesting. Privateness. Privateness is how honest you are about who you are. Low scorers are forthright, genuine, artless, open, guileless, naive, unpretentious, and involved. High scorers are private. I think that's private. I'm certain that that's a spelling error because I'm just going to assume it is because it says revate, which I don't recognize as a word. So I'm going to assume rather than my not knowing that word, I'm going to assume that they misspelled it, and it should be private, discreet, non-disclosing, shrewd, polished, worldly, astute, and diplomatic. That one I scored a 1.5, so it'd be more towards the forthright, genuine, and open. But I don't know. I could see myself scoring a little bit more in the middle there than I am. Apprehension is how troubled you are. Low scorers are self-assured, unworried, complacent, secure, free of guilt, confident, and self-satisfied. High scorers are apprehensive, self-doubting, worried, guilt-prone, insecure, worrying, and self-blaming. And I scored on the lower end of the middle, 1.8. We'll skip the openness to change. We'll go on to self-reliance. We'll go back to openness to change for the last one. Self-reliance is how contained your needs are. Low scorers are group-oriented and affiliative. High scorers are self-reliant, solitary, resourceful, individualistic, and self-sufficient. I got a 2.7. So I like to include people. I guess that's what it's saying. But I don't have to. I like you to be there, but if you ain't going to be there or just decide not today, don't need you. Ha Perfectionism. I knew I was going to score with this one, so yeah. Perfectionism is how high your standards are for yourself. Low scorers tolerate disorder, are unexacting, flexible, and undisciplined, lax self-conflict, impulsive. I think that's self-conflicting. Impulsive, careless of social rules, and uncontrolled. Interesting. High scorers are perfectionists. Organized, compulsive, self-disciplined, socially precise, exacting willpower, control, and self-sentimental. To which I scored a 1.5 and am not at all a perfectionist in any way, shape, or form. My armor sets, I'm like, well, in Monster Hunter, my armor sets like, good enough. I could probably do better, but for right now, this will just do. And then do for right now ends up just being do for the long haul. So yeah, I should probably work on that a little bit more. Maybe not just armor sets, but like life in general, but it's a tough thing. Tension is how driven you are, crossed with impatience. Low scorers are relaxed, placid, tranquil, torpid. That's a fun word to say. Patient, composed, with a low drive. High scorers are tense, high energy, impatient, driven, frustrated, overwrought, and time-driven. And I scored just a hair over the middle ground on 2.2, so I'm just kind of in that middle. That's not lazy, but not exactly gung-ho all the time either. And finally, going back to openness to change, is how not stuck in your ways you are. Low scorers are traditional, attached to familiar, conservative, and respect traditional ideas. High scorers are open to change, experimental, liberal, analytical, critical, free-thinking, and flexible. And this, out of all of the different factors, I scored the highest on with a 3.7 out of 4, which kind of scary, really, how high that one got. Not really scary, but that's not really the right word there. But it's very indicative. I'm very, I want to say exocentric, because I have another topic in my book about being ethnocentric, so that's not really that's probably not the right word either. But for the moment, it'll do. I'm very exocentric in my ideals, in that I tend to focus more on things outside of just me, and in some cases to the exclusion of me. Just be like, well, I see this going on, or I want to experience this, and so I'm going to facilitate it. Going overseas and experiencing new cultures and meeting new people and all those lovely things, and being just very flexible and willing to change with the time or the occasion, rather than just being very rigid in everything that I do or choose to take upon myself. So yeah, I'm not really sure what I really learned from this. Like I said, this is the first I've taken this one. Tomorrow I'll have one that I'm more familiar with. I'll have a link in the description down below if you would also like to do this and learn a little bit more about yourself, like I did yesterday and will do again in the future. But yeah, hope you all have enjoyed. Hope this is a little bit interesting. Maybe get you all thinking a little bit about yourselves. And yeah, I will see you all next time. Goodbye.